All right, thanks for coming, guys. Today we're going to talk about Python 3, why it exists, what's different about it, why we want to switch, and how we're going to switch. So let's dive in. So why does anyone care about Python 3? The big thing is that it's backwards incompatible in a bunch of ways. Third-party libraries that we might use a lot, some of them may not work on Python 3, so it makes it difficult to switch. And the Python community, as you guys probably know, is still split between Python 2 and Python 3, probably around 50-50 right now. I'm not sure. But it's very slow adoption. It's like 15 years since it came out, right? It's a long time. Why does it exist? One of the main reasons is that text and binary data are pretty messy in Python 2. It's difficult to deal with Unicode text. The default string type can only deal with like ASCII stuff, not Unicode stuff. So they thought, okay, we're going to fix this. A lot of the world has accented characters or other character sets, and while we're doing that, let's fix a bunch of other stuff that's kind of ugly and that we wanted to fix anyways. So the transition's been pretty poorly handled, I think, and everyone probably thinks because it's taken so long. A lot of these quotes from people that worked on the transition say, yeah, we'll never do it like this again. Yeah, so it's been taking everyone a really long time to switch. Do we have to move? The fact is that they're basically forcing us to. They're going to not, there's going to be no more Python 2 versions after 2.7, and it'll be supported for 2 more years, but no performance improvements. Python 3, all the work going into making Python faster is going into the Python 3 version, so there will be some performance benefits there. Okay, so let's do some examples of what changed. One of the most obvious things is that print is now a function, not a statement. So instead of this weird thing where you just put print and then a space and then some stuff, now it's a function with parentheses. One of the reasons they might have done this is because it allows it easier. It makes it easier to use parameters like setting a separator or an ending thing. Yeah. Another thing is that they got rid of the default integer division. So if you divided two ints in Python 2, it would give you an int. So it would round down basically. In Python 3, it'll actually say, oh, you probably want a float instead of an int, which kind of seems reasonable. And now if you want the old behavior, you can use the two division signs. So it kind of flipped it the way it used to work. Integers themselves are kind of changed. In Python 2, there's an integer that can hold up to a certain size integer, and then above that you have to use long. And now in Python 3, int can handle whatever long could handle in the past, so everything. They renamed some random stuff, so as I was going through PyPapp and stuff, there's just random stuff that you had to change the name of. So that's nice. There's no more implied relative imports. So at the top here, if you, in your own package, you had something called fixtures and you want to import stuff from it, you could do that. The problem there is that there might be a third-party package called fixtures that maybe you were trying to import from. And so now they said, well, we don't want that ambiguity. So if you want to import something relatively, you have to use the dot at the front. So from dot fixtures in Python 3. Strings are different. Again, one of the main reasons for switching to Python 3 was to make Unicode used throughout. And so basically in Python 2, the string type can handle ASCII stuff, not Unicode stuff, and there's a separate Unicode type. In Python 3, the string type is basically the old Unicode type. It can handle Unicode stuff. They also added something called a bytes type, which can handle byte strings, basically like the old string type could do. I'm supposed to give an example here. I think, yeah, I wanted to give an example of how this could actually like break your code. So let's go to, I have this virtual env that runs Python 3. So let's say we wanted to scrape the web. And now we have this res.content thing. If I wanted to say, if I just wanted to add some extra stuff, like, it's going to yell at me. So in Python 2, this code would have worked. It would have said, oh, it's probably trying to, I can try to figure out how to combine these two different things. In Python 3, it says, oh, I can't concatenate a byte string, which is what res.content is, to a string, which is a Unicode string. So that behavior could break stuff in your code.
So is it okay if you do res.text and that's a Unicode string?
That does work, yeah. Yeah. But I always use res.content, so I guess that's my problem. So exceptions have to inherit from base exception now. So in our code, we have common exceptions that would like fill in the except blank as E. And then sometimes when we had no common exceptions, we'd put a none there. Turns out that Python 3 doesn't like that because it doesn't inherit from base exception. So you have to put an empty tuple instead of a none. Anyways. So basically, this changed a lot of stuff. Is kind of what the gist of this is. But exceptions don't have a .message attribute. Now you have to just wrap a string around it. URL lib used to be kind of disorganized. There was URL parse, URL lib, URL lib2, and now they kind of organize them together into one URL lib package with different subparts. They got rid of reduce because people didn't like it. Guido didn't like it, I guess. Didn't really get rid of it because they just put it in functools, so to kind of discourage people from using it, I guess. String has an iter method. And so this is annoying because sometimes in PyPap we had said if has adder of something has if something has the iter attribute, then it's probably a list or a tuple or something. But that would fail on a string in the past, and now it would succeed on a string. So it's kind of annoying. When you do .items on stuff, it used to be a list. So you could then iterate through that list, and now it's an iterator. So it's going to be faster, but if you really needed it to be a list, it won't be a list. And that same behavior follows with things like .keys and other types of things that used to return a list. Some nice things, there's this thing called f-strings. So if I wanted to fill in some stuff, I wanted to say, I could do my string
the format.
What's that?
Dot format.
Oh, I was going to do the... Oh, yeah, you're right. Thanks. Okay, you could do that in the past. Now, instead of doing that, it kind of gets verbose, having to write .format, this, that, the other thing. You can just write a string that starts with F and do... and just do that right in it, and it'll find the variable that matches that, fill in the blank, even do a little math. I think that's pretty cool. Star unpacking. So say you had a list of stuff, and you wanted to just get the first and last thing. You can do first, comma, just the rest of the stuff, and then last. I think that's kind of cool. So the star thing can kind of capture everything that's in the middle. Okay, and in the past, this was something that messed me up one time. But if you do is 1 greater than that. So now it says that fails. In Python 2, it says it's true. Does anyone want to guess how they're determining that? Turns out they're not obviously turning it into an int and then comparing it. It turns out what they're doing is they're ranking by the class name. So a string that starts with S, and S is later in the alphabet than I for int. So that's how they decided that.
Does that work for any class?
I think so. So I don't know. I mean, we could do float. This should be the opposite, right? Well, no, wait.
F and then
Oh, S is still after. Okay. But integer, gee, this should be false.
so that is numbers.
Oh, you're right. Then it's numbers. But
Create a class. Create a class. A.
Okay, class.
You can just flip it, make the second number a string. Right, that would be false.
Yeah, that's true.
I was wondering if
Like this?
it applies to types that are
There you
not
go.
string.
Okay.
Like a class or a list or a type.
Okay, yeah, works with any class. So, weird. And that's, I mean, no one would expect that, I don't think. I think the reason they put it in there is so if you had a list of things that had many things in it that were different classes, when you ordered it, it would put all the strings first, and then the int second, and then the other things last, which maybe is helpful.
We actually rely on that behavior in PyPub. Not joking.
Really?
Yeah, I remember because when we do the, I think if you append to like a buffer, if you append a dictionary to a buffer, it needs to normalize it. So that's always going to be. If you append a list or a dictionary or something like that, it needs to normalize it so it's always in the same order. And if you have like keys that are integers and strings, it does some.
Oh.
I think we relied on that. We can look it up after. We had to fix something with that. I can't remember what it was.
I forget what it
We
was.
can find it.
But besides that, I think it seems nice that you can't do weird things like that. Besides PyPack relying on it. Cool. So there's a couple of approaches different companies and people have taken to move to Python 3. You could just like turn everything off and then update it and then turn it back on in Python 3. You could have two different branches of your code, one that works in Python 2, one that works in Python 3. Problem with that is you fix a bug in 2, you have to fix the same bug in 3, and then maybe there's different bugs you introduce. So the more common approach, and the more common approach, and the one that we're taking is to have like straddling code. So one code base that will run in Python 2 and will run in Python 3 at the same time, flip of a switch. So how do we do that? How do we make that straddling code? So it's a few different tools. The first one you guys have definitely seen is Future. So you've probably seen at the top of some files from Future import Unicode literals. Some other things it can do is enforce the no implied relative import thing, and also make print a function. So it's pretty basic. So basically you put this in your Python 2 code to enforce the Python 3 behavior. Another thing is 6. So this wraps over differences between Python 2 and 3. An example is if you're checking if something is one of the integer types. In Python 2 you would have to check if it's an integer or if it's a long. In Python 3 you just check if it's an int, and it would yell at you if you looked for something called a long. So here you just import from 6 an object that will know what all the integer types in it are if you're in Python 2 and what they are if you're in Python 3. Another thing it can do, I mentioned earlier that URL-lib is reorganized. It put a lot of this stuff in this thing called 6.moves. So this code, whether you're running in Python 2 or Python 3, will know where to grab that information from, where to grab those packages from. Another thing it has is like a flag for py3. So if you say if py3 and then your code that you want to run under Python 3, else do this. So if you really can't, if none of the other tools work to fix it, you can do that. So this thing called 2 to 3, it's a command line utility that will update Python 2 code to work in Python 3. So it'll change print statements to print functions, import the right stuff, things like that. And then on top of this, there's this thing called Python modernize. Basically, it's a wrapper on top of that, that instead of changing from 2 to 3, it changes from 2 to something that will support both 2 and 3 at the same time. So that's more of the approach that we wanted to take. So let's look at how we're going to use Python modernize here. So let's say I have the Car Gurus product. And right now it's just regular Python 2 code. I'll show you how modernize would work. So basically I say Python modernize and I say check this thing, check the imports thing. And I run that and it's going to tell me, okay, I think you should not import URL parse, but import from 6.moves.urllib.parse and then use that down here. So it turns out that there's a couple dozen of these different changes that they can suggest. I just look for the imports one. But I wrote the script that will check, okay, which ones do we need to apply to this repository? So for each line here, it's saying, it's running that code, and if it suggests any changes, it's going to tell me at the end. And, yeah.
So like at some point, we'll have to do this to all of our projects?
Yeah. The goal is, though, probably to have a script just do this for you. Because what we're going to do is basically, the idea is to add a pre-commit hook to everyone's repo that will make sure there's no backsliding. So it'll, anything that they're not Python 2.3 compatible with yet, it won't throw an error if that's in there. But if you already did the imports right and then you change it back to the old style, the pre-commit hook will yell at you. That's the idea. So we're going to do that right now. Looks like Car Gurus needs these things right here. So I'm going to copy this pre-commit hook file from a different repo that I know has this.
I think this is where, so basically the script ran through all those different fixtures and found that there's only 5 changes, 5 change types that need to be, of the 30-some or whatever it is fixtures, there's only 5 that need to be applied to this repo to get Python 3, the first level Python 3 compatibility. So, but by doing this, you know, what Sam's doing is, if we set up the pre-commit for the other 25, you make sure that we don't, so as he said, like regress on those. So you don't need to think about those other 25, you just need to make sure, you know, to start getting this going forward, it's just a matter of handling those 5.
Yeah. And that will be different for each repo, so that's why you have to run this. So basically, the pre-commit hook itself is going to run based on this file. So there's this command, Python modernize, and then it'll add to it this X flag. So that's excluding a fixer for everything in that list that we just created from that script. So I'm going to copy this file to Car Gurus. And then one more thing we need to do is in our pre-commit config, whoops. In our pre-commit config, so this is copying it from another repo that I've already done this for. We're going to add this local hook. Okay. So basically we've added this hooks file and we've changed the pre-commit config. And now, one last thing we're going to do is in this args thing here, we're going to fill that in with those fixers that we want to exclude. So all of this right here is, the plan is to have this done automatically for your repo. It'll add this pre-commit hook, it'll add the hooks.py file, and it'll fill in with the appropriate things to exclude. Cool. So let's do it. Let's make pre-commit.
So this is not, the repo is not Python 2 compatible, right?
Right now, it's only Python 2 compatible.
Until you like fix those things.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it passed, which is what we want, because we don't want it to break anyone's pre-commit hook off the bat. And so we can say, okay, now I'm ready to fix one of these things. Let's get rid of this import 6 thing. So now it's going to apply that fixer, that check. So let's do the pre-commit again. And it yelled at me. So it failed the Python 2.3 thing, and it says, no, you need to change these things. You need to import from 6 and use 6.moves.urllib.parse. So what I'm going to do, whoops, is when I run this, I ran this earlier, which just tells me what to change. You could do each of these changes manually, or if you trust what it suggested, you can add the W flag, which will write those changes to your code, and then the N flag, which means don't save backups of the old code. So let's do that. Okay, so it made those changes. It changed the scripts in create database file, and now let's make pre-commit. And it passed. So basically, you could just go through one at a time, getting rid of these, and then your code would be pretty close to Python 2 and 3 compatible. So there could be things that you still need to change after that, but you'll be very close. And that's about all I had.